All right, everybody, thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and get started here. We've got a great panel here with some industry luminaries who some of you may already know. But this is Broadcast in the Cloud, how One Station Group reimagined its media supply chain. So we've got some folks that are going to go ahead and come out right now. Representatives from Sinclair Broadcast, AWS, and Embrace. While they're coming out, quick intro. My name is David Rosen. I head up the Media Cloud Services Group within C, within Sony, that is responsible for the C Media Cloud platform. And with that, we'll do some quick introductions. To my left, go ahead and start with you, Mike.
I'm Mike Palmer. I am Vice President of Media Management for Sinclair.
I'm Adam Chugg. I'm an Enterprise Account Executive at AWS, covering all the broadcasters in North America.
And I'm Julien Gachot. I'm the CEO and founder of Embrace.
And clearly the most stylish one on this panel.
You all look great, man.
So real quick, to give some context of what we're going to talk about, Mike Palmer is going to go ahead and give a quick overview of what they achieved at Sinclair. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it to you, Mike, and then we'll get into questions right after.
So at Sinclair, we've been working on moving to cloud, moving most of our processing and media processing from on-prem at our stations to consolidation in the clouds. In the process of doing that, we've been able to eliminate most of our on-prem transcoding, systems that are receiving files, files being syndicated programs, spots, promos, that sort of thing, and move all of that into the cloud where we're processing it. Here you can see the functional diagram for what we have. We have distributors and contributors. Those are pitch blue on the spot, et cetera, feeding content in. Contributors are everything from local car dealerships to the guy in Kearney, Nebraska, who's editing spots for the local zoo's gift shop in his garage. So a large spectrum of expertise in generating these files that send to us. So we have to accept files of a wide range of quality and standards. That goes into media processing here. Right now, we've replaced one of the established but older vendors of transcode with AWS, specifically with AWS processes, including AI, elemental, step functions, and Lambda. We produce files and put those in an output S3 bucket. And then on top of that sits Sony C, which is our view into that content, as well as our media management system handling the metadata. And then the third major component we have here is Embrace and Pulse IT, which is looking at the metadata that is in C and the database there, and then sending the content onto our Amagi Play app. All of this is set up to feed content into the Amagi Cloud Play app at this point. And in the process of doing this, we've had great success creating improved performance, efficiency, and most of all, cutting out the extra equipment that we had at the stations and reducing the number of duplicate files that we were processing as well. This system right now, as of yesterday, is producing 2 million files a year, processing 2 million renditions a year. As we move more of our stations into Cloud Playout, that number will go up. So we should be somewhere around 2.5 million by the end of the year.
Thank you, Mike. That's a great high-level description of the overall initiative. It's crazy that you can describe that in such short period of time, given how much effort went into making this happen. So with that, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about what were some of the technical challenges or maybe some of the constraints that you felt with your existing infrastructure that was mainly on-prem that kind of led you to this path? And I'm going to ask a follow-up question, which is less focused on the technical side and more, what were some of the business imperatives that you were trying to achieve? So maybe if you can answer both of those, that'd be fantastic.
So the main problem that we were solving here is deduplication of both equipment and processing. So if we received a national spot that was going to play at, let's say, 20 of our stations, it would be received by 20 separate pieces of equipment at 20 different sites, and then transcoded 20 different times by 20 different sets of equipment that were sitting there and running all the time. So obviously you can see there's some room for deduplication and optimization there. So that was our first design goal, is to simply deduplicate effort and resources. And the savings on that are pretty obvious at that point. As we moved into the cloud, we had some lessons that we learned there that were interesting. Some of the vendors that we brought into the cloud initially had responsive systems. They were dynamic. They scaled up in response to demand, which was great. But once we started hitting our stride and the volume really went up, we found that those systems weren't operating as we thought that they should. And because we measure everything in the pipeline, and you can see what we call the media bus here, we measure everything that comes in, how long it takes to process, and where it goes. And when we started having those errors, we went back and we did some analysis and said, what does this look like? We helped the vendor diagnose the problem that they had, which was one that could not be fixed because it was a deep architectural problem. We then used the data at that point to come up with a mitigation. So that was going to be a short-term fix for us. But again, using that data, we could predict how long that mitigation would be effective. And that date is the end of June 2026. So that gave us about a year to come up with a long-term fix. And our long-term fix was simply replacing that legacy system with AWS specific and native functions. So we're using Elemental, some AWS AI, and really leaning heavily on step functions and Lambda, which in large part we're creating through vibe coding. So using vibe coding, we are able to replace that legacy system with these components. And in doing so, we were able to have half the time it takes us to produce the content and also significantly reduce the cost of producing the content and reduce license fees at the same time. So really from a functional perspective and a business perspective, this has really worked out well for us.
Yeah, I'd love to follow you down that rabbit hole about AI and vibe coding, but wasn't on the agenda, but man, that's like a softball I'd love to knock out of the park with you guys. One of the interesting things that you mentioned is that you're leveraging some AI capabilities against your content now to help more quickly produce content, or at least get early drafts that can help produce that content more quickly. Could you have done that as easily as you are now able to do had you not migrated everything from on-prem into the cloud, in your opinion?
No. We do subscribe to the Movie Labs 2030 vision, and that is that the processing should come to the content rather than the content going to the processing. So if we were going to distribute that through, 50, 60 on-prem stations, that would have been an effort in and of itself. If we were going to process it on-prem, if we were going to produce it off-prem, think of the bandwidth we would have had to purchase to support moving that to and from the cloud. So deduplication and centralization really helps not only the processing, but also these extra functions that we want to perform on the content, like AI enrichment.
And I'm sure that was part of the plan from day one, was being able to take advantage of those things.
I would like to think so, but really key to this is, and we had help from Embrace and AWS in setting this up, talking about best practice. And as we set it up, we were really thinking forward with our media bus and other components. How easily is it going to be able to extend the system without having to re-architect it? And that was really central to our vision and work.
All right. You've been on the hot seat long enough. Adam, let's go over to you.
Yep.
Are you seeing any similar patterns with other customers in the broadcast industry looking to make this type of change? This is not a small change, as I think everybody here probably is aware. It's fair to say, Mike, this is a multi-year effort for you guys?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So not a small decision, but an important one nonetheless. Are you starting to see similar requests coming from other large broadcasters?
We are, and I think Mike hit it on the nail with the Movie Labs, right? Bringing the content, or bringing to the content is really, really important, and that's what we're seeing across the industry. And the deduplication, as we have to kind of stretch and kind of make more value out of the content supply chain and other broadcasters, We're seeing them kind of being able to use this flexibility. I think that was a big thing we went through it, was the ability for you guys to rapidly innovate, right? And I think that that's at the stage we're at when it comes to broadcasters, is being able to rapidly innovate, and AWS and partners like Embrace help make that happen.
Good answer. So when they're coming to you, these customers in broadcast, are they coming to you with a very clear strategy? Here's what we want to do. Here's how we're going to do it. These are the partners we'd like you to, corral. Or is it more of a, we've got some pain points and we don't know exactly what we need and we need some help?
If everybody came to me with a very clear strategy, I feel like I'd have a fairly easy job. No, I think it does. It comes down to what is the business problem we're trying to solve? Where is your pain point? Where is the pressure, right? And how can we kind of back into, a solution that kind of fits that way? I think Sinclair took a really wise approach to it, which is the media pipeline, right? At the end of the day, media comes in, media goes out, right? And kind of being able to build that as your central backbone is something that I would, recommend as a starting point when it comes to that. But yeah, I think that's where we kind of start. And with AWS, right, we're very partner friendly, like Sony. We want to be able to bring and work with the technology and the partners that each of our customers are working for. And then we're just here to help facilitate that on our backbone and our infrastructure.
So I'll just add that I think one of the things we brought was a very clear vision of the minimum set of what we wanted to do,
Yep.
but we didn't know how to do it. And that's really where we leaned on AWS to step in and say, these are the tools that we can bring to bear.
And we're still learning. I mean, every day I think we're finding a new thing. We're finding a new way to kind of make it happen. New technology keeps advancing. And again, the way that the system has been made very modular. It gives a lot of flexibility and improvement and growth over time as it kind of can morph and change. This is not the same V1 that we started with years ago, right? But it's really morphed and grown into a much more useful product.
And we do believe in build fast and fail fast. So we've done that many times, and that brings us to a good place.
All right, Julien. So I like to think of C being the central repository of the content as being a really important part of the architecture, probably the most critical part of the architecture. But that's just me. I think the workflow orchestration, which is brought by Embrace's Pulse IT, I mean, that's really the central repository of the intelligence of this system, knowing where everything is and where it needs to go. Tell us a little bit why workflow orchestration is such a critical component of a solution like this.
Well, I think what we learned with the Sinclair project as they moved to the cloud is that we entered not only a world of connecting systems with APIs, but most of the things became data-driven and became events-driven, which was very new. So I don't think we're completely in the world of orchestration right now, where we've moved into data-driven and events-driven decisions and providing the observability that is required. Your question for the business earlier, I think reflects that. It's not about, connecting Sony C as the media hub with the rest of all the media services that are in operation at Sinclair. But it's about, the API provides maybe access to systems, and you would think maybe orchestration is just triggering APIs, but it's actually understanding the data that provides the context and add events to that give you real-time feedback about what's happening in your pipeline. And in the context and the scale of Sinclair, when you think it's 200 channels, 65 content centers operating, our role is to provide the visibility about what's going on in real time to the business. And Mike touched on that with Media Hub, but I think that's a critical aspect of what we provide.
Good segue. In a system like this, sometimes things need to be switched out. You've already experienced this maybe once, and maybe again, right? Maybe at some point C is not going to be the right solution, or some other part of the architecture needs to be swapped out. You've built things in such a manner that you're able to do that, and you not just put that on paper, but we've seen that in action. This leads me to this question: how important is an API-first strategy with regards to the vendors that you're selecting?
there's two things that are absolutely key to the architecture underneath all this. One is open APIs that we all understand and we can call. And the second one is data and metadata independence. So we believe very strongly that all the metadata should be in open formats. As David knows, we store the data, the source of truth of the data, in sidecar files in our S3 buckets. Okay, that's not the operational data because that gets moved up into a database where it's operational. But the idea is if we need to take any one of our components and swap it out, we can do it immediately and then rehydrate the new components database from the sidecar files and bring that back in. We tell our vendors whenever we bring them in that they're replaceable at any point, that our architecture requires that. And if they can't meet that, then we don't bring them into the ecosystem. So it is very flexible, and when we need to switch vendors out, we can. We don't like going through the effort and trouble to do that, so we like long-term relationships. But whenever it's necessary, then we know that our data is not going to be held hostage in somebody's proprietary database.
So, Julien, how about when it comes to the customers that you're supporting and what you're being asked to do, being able to have industry partners that you can very easily leverage and integrate with their system clearly must be important to your ability to move quickly for customers. And I don't remember the number, maybe you might know offhand, but just the number of connectors that you have with the solutions in the media and entertainment industry is an astounding number. But how important is that to you guys to be successful?
Well, actually, we don't use the term connector anymore, simply because those relate to how I think broadcast systems and operations were built previously, where we, as an industry, we were building bespoke connectors, all of us. That took time. It was not very agile. It slowed the cadence of projects to the time to value for customers like Sinclair. So the way we looked at it is completely differently a decade ago. And we thought, okay, it's the end of connectors. We're not going to sell connectors. We need to limit the stickiness to us to enable to be replaceable. I didn't like that too much, but earlier, but it's true that it's the approach that Mike has, and it has proven to be very efficient when changes need to be applied. So what we've decided to do is to actually build a solution and low code and no code with all the tasks that our industry might require to connect systems, data, and events like I mentioned in introduction. And so I don't know if we're not interacting or supervising any of the tech that is here at NAB, probably the bulk of the systems, including services that are native on AWS. So the reason we do that is we actually have integrations, not connectors, and customers can actually build those integrations on their own. Internally, we call that sovereignty, but I'm sure Mike could touch on that for a second, but his team, his lean team, actually does all the innovation to serve the business without even letting us know. So, I mean, you touched on AI a little bit, but to bring AI in context at scale and in a controlled manner is at the core of the business we're doing today. But my team is not building any connectors to these AI services. And when there's a need from Sony C, typically as the media hub, to add metadata enrichment, trigger maybe transcription, build embeddings to understand the catalog better for Sinclair, these integrations are designed by the team that understands the business requirement, not us. So we're aware of most of them because we do have strategic relationships like the ones we enjoy both with AWS and Sony at corporate level, and we make sure that we always follow and we share notes on co-innovation, but the reality is that we're probably integrated with most of the vendors out there.
Let me hit on something that we take for granted now, but is, I think, very different in our system than many of the systems that are out there, and that is we rely on the media bus. Okay, the media bus for us is an SNS topic, AWS SNS topic, message bus, message queue that we put the status of everything we do on, as well as those would be nouns, but we also put verbs on it. So if we need something to do something for us, we put the message on the bus, and then we have different systems subscribe to that bus and listen for the effects. How is that different than it's been done in the past? In the past, you'd have a process polling a storage location looking for a change, right? Mm. In our system, when a change is made, it's published to the media bus and it notifies the application in the integration layer that something happens. And this is how we are propagating changes in metadata that are made in Sony C through pulse it, and then turning into actions that move media and transcode media to play back in other locations.
So it's funny, Mike mentioned and Julien laughed about the idea that any component in an architecture is ultimately replaceable. But that's backed up by the fact that the level of monitoring that they have built into the system can tell them at any given point in time how each component is performing. I'll admit, I've got a text message at some point in my relationship with Mike.
You
where
too? You too?
you got one? Yeah.
Never happened here.
Never?
I don't know what
Okay,
you're talking about.
And he's been able to say, yeah, the latency on the search APIs just exceeded 250 milliseconds, and we can see that clearly. Could you please get your team on a team session? Yes, sir. We'll be right there. But that ability to pinpoint exactly where there are problems and issues and what's working well and what's working not truly does give them the ability to determine, who needs to stay in the platform and who doesn't. So I think that's a critical part of your architecture.
And we're able to relate that back to ROI, savings, and performance. So we take AWS billing information in on a daily basis. That goes into the system as well. So I can tell you at any point in time how much it's costing us to produce a 30-second local spot, a 30-second national spot, a 30-minute syndicated program, et cetera. And that's all related to the components of the CMP that are producing it. So we can compare the essentially how much it's going to cost us more or less if we replace this particular component for the business.
And that's got to be critical. And the fact that you're able to have such granular understanding of your cost of operations, I have to imagine that's something that is a brand new benefit in the solution. Because prior to that, you had, not you particularly, but organizations have very large capital expenditures that they make. And they know exactly how much they spent. They know, what the useful life is of that. But the best that they can do is take a look at those large expenditures that were made many years ago and then somehow amortize that across the number of programs that are being produced at any given point in time. But they can't tell you, hey, this new format that we're using, which costs us a certain amount of money to produce, is it worth us creating? Are we generating enough revenue in order to justify the cost of actually producing this new sort of content? Is that a business benefit that you guys have achieved?
It's a huge benefit. So here's an example. We know how much bandwidth it takes to push the finished files around, okay, to our cloud playout systems and to our on-prem DR systems. We knew that if we changed the compression format standard that we were using, the files would get smaller. And we modeled that out and we said we can actually avoid increasing the amount of bandwidth we need back to the stations, which is about $1 million, okay? So, but we're able to model that through the pipeline and its end effects by having all this monitoring in place.
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive, massive benefit. And we got to get you back into the party here. How's this shift enabled business models for broadcasters, whether it's content monetization or additional faster distribution, the ability to get content to new channels? Is that something that you're seeing be top of mind for folks in this industry, that they're looking for solutions like that from AWS?
We are, right? One thing I always say, right, is it's an attention economy. You're not competing anymore with each other, you're competing with TikTok. And so being able to be very flexible on these new methods of distribution. Vertical video is becoming very important, right? Digital delivery is becoming very important. And AWS kind of gives these broadcasters the ability to build fast, fail fast, figure out what works, what doesn't work, enter into new markets, localization, things like that. And that's where we're seeing a lot of people are starting to lean in on this technology because it's giving them new revenue streams. It's giving them the ability to kind of hit new markets or hit new audiences. And I think that's a really big game changer.
All right, we've got about 4 minutes left, and I've got one question that I want to go down the line on, but one more before that so Mike, you've been at this a while, and you've had great success. Where do you see this going in the next, 3 to 5 years? How do you see this expanding?
Well, we're working on 2 projects with AWS right now. One is agentic creation of content for things like promos and other things. And then the other one is agentic handling of exceptions. For instance, if we have a file that's missing from a distributor, how do we spot that in time to request a refeed, fix a problem, et cetera, and still get it on air at the scheduled time without having to involve operators to the extent possible. So bringing these AI and agentic functions back into the workflow in a very practical way is what we're focusing on right now.
Okay, quick fire. Who's ready? Who wants to go first?
On the same question?
No, brand new question. You don't know what it's going to be,
You
so
don't
be
even know
careful.
what it is.
Yeah, could be anything.
I'm at the end of the line
No.
here.
All right, so
shoot, go for
ready.
it, David.
All right, so if we're here in 3 years in NAB on this stage,
Yeah.
what do you think the biggest transformations in how broadcast is done, broadcast operations are done? What do you think those biggest changes will be?
Well, I think with what we've been talking today and what Sinclair has been doing is showing a very clear path of that. And even what you just said around agentic, for the way we look at it, and we think this is going, is that the complexity of these centralized systems and all the outpoints and the multi-geography distribution and all these new models, you touch on TikTok, YouTube, and all the others. I think this is really going to be generating tremendous amounts of data and events, to my point earlier. And organizations such as Sinclair and us as an industry, we need to find the ways to interpret and act on that data, I think, to be extremely efficient operationally. So I think it's a challenge, but I think we will be sharing notes around how well we're doing at acting. So agentic is one way of acting automatically, but there's also probably other ways as well. But it would, to me, it's clearly where the challenges ahead of us will be.
All right, Adam, you have the benefit of working with all of the major broadcasters all of the time, seeing what's new, what's coming. Where do you think we're going to be in 3 years with broadcast operations?
I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I kind of agree in kind of the agentic workflow, right? Because with the work that Sinclair is doing, going API first, happy accident, that fits in very well with agents being able to take automated actions, right? And so I do think we'll be in a world where there's a lot more agentic workflows that are using MCP servers or other kind of means of using tools that are all those APIs, which will again free up the ability to do more and be able to kind of create more content and hit new markets, hit new things from there.
Sorry, you already answered.
I just want to add something because
I'll allow it.
I was thinking as you were talking that we actually have there's a service provider working with all of us to the benefit of Sinclair. That is a really strategic partner to AWS called Trackit, who have a booth at the show, and they're showing agentic AI use with Sony C, AWS, ourselves. And the demo really reflects that future, I think, today. So maybe we can invite everyone to visit Trackit and understand where this is going.
Absolutely. And if you happen to know their booth location, feel free to share it out. I don't off the top of my head, but if you look it up, it's Trackit, Trackit. And a fantastic partner all the way around. All right, Mike, you got to close this out. Where do you think we are in 3 years?
In 3 years, Most of the products, with the exception of some products like C that are definitely user-facing, but most products will be sold as a service without a front end, as a series of APIs, and they'll be driven by agents, and humans will be handling the exceptions for the agents and then training them.
It's a good prediction. Let's see if it comes true. All right, well, thank you all. Please give a hand to our panelists. Fantastic. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.